LiberalViewer presents.
So as soon as I saw the Obama administration succeed where the Bush administration had failed in getting Osama Bin Laden, I knew it wouldn't take long for Fox News and right-wing Republicans to come up with some kind of a spin on it, which is just what I saw starting to happen within 48 hours of Bin Laden's death, when Fox and Friends ran a segment now uploaded under a title asking, "Gitmo Intel Key to Getting Bin Laden," a question for which Gretchen Carlson got a negative answer from President Obama's National Security Advisor John Brennan, as you can see here.
Now, what allowed us to get to the Abbottabad compound was many, many years of painstaking analysis as well as collection, putting together bits and pieces of information. Some of it came from individuals who were in custody. Some of it came from human sources, other technical means. But there was no single bit of information that was instrumental. It was the work that the analysts did, putting it together, that led us to the successful raid that took place on Sunday.
Now, even though John Brennan actually said no there to Gretchen Carlson's question about whether Bush interrogation tactics were responsible for getting bin Laden, that didn't stop Fox and Friends from flashing titles on the screen, first claiming interrogation methods helped get UBL, and then more incredibly claiming victory for Bush, which was part of a concerted effort last week on the part of former Bush administration officials to use the killing of Osama bin Laden to justify Bush-era interrogation tactics because, as the ACLU's Ben Weisner pointed out in a very balanced NPR story last week,
the people who are pushing this narrative are the ones who have the most to gain if it takes hold and the most to lose if the ongoing criminal investigation of that program continues.
And the person who may have the most to gain from rehabilitating Bush-era torture tactics is one of the administration's strongest advocates of torture, former Vice President Dick Cheney, who appeared on Fox News Sunday this week, pointing to other officials from the Bush administration to support his case, but then trying to sneak in the supposed support of Obama administration departing CIA Director Leon Panetta, as you can see here.
Whether we talk about Jose Rodriguez, who ran the counterterrorism program, Michael Mukasey, who was the Attorney General, Leon Panetta, all have said one way or another that the enhanced interrogation program played a role. That is to say that some of the early leads came out of that program. My guess is that's probably the case, that it contributed, just as did a number of other factors.
And now, Dick Cheney's inclusion there of the Obama administration's departing CIA Director Leon Panetta as support for his so-called enhanced interrogation techniques is not exactly accurate, because Leon Panetta's support included the caveat that any information gained from torture like waterboarding might well have been more quickly obtained by more effective, less violent interrogation methods, as you can see when Leon Panetta answered a question from anchor Brian Williams on the NBC Nightly News last week in this clip.
Are you denying that waterboarding was in part among the tactics used to extract the intelligence that led to this successful mission?
No, I think some of the detainees clearly were they used these enhanced interrogation techniques against some of these detainees. But I'm also saying that, the debate about whether we would have gotten the same information through other approaches, I think is always going to be an open question.
And that's true, which is also a point the ACLU's Ben Weisner made back on that more balanced NPR report that included this audio clip.
No one has ever argued that intelligence can't be extracted through brutality, only that brutality is much less effective than humane interrogation.
So when Dick Cheney pointed to Leon Panetta's support on Fox News Sunday, it should have raised the question that Leon Panetta raised about whether the same information could have been better obtained by less brutal means, but of course, in the friendly, exclusive interview Dick Cheney gave to Fox News, that's not the question interviewer Chris Wallace raised, instead responding with the much more tendentious question you can see here.
Which raises the question, if we were to now capture another new high-value target, which is certainly more likely given this apparent trove of information that they recovered in bin Laden's compound, should the president reinstate enhanced interrogation, including waterboarding?
Of course, with that softball question, Dick Cheney never had to respond in the interview to the strong evidence that torture doesn't work, instead making the opposite claim supported by a false statement about a CIA report that you can see here.
And it worked. It provided some absolutely vital pieces of intelligence. There's a study that was done by the CIA that's in the National Archives. Some of it's been declassified now, that shows that enhanced interrogation of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed provided a vast treasure trove, if you will, of intelligence. So it was a good program. It was a legal program. It was not torture. And I would strongly recommend that we continue it.
That's just awful, because the partially declassified CIA report to which Dick Cheney referred there absolutely does not support Cheney's claim that torture tactics like waterboarding worked, instead specifically stating in its conclusion, quote, "The effectiveness of particular interrogation techniques in eliciting information that might not otherwise have been obtained cannot be so easily measured," unquote. And that's because, as I learned through my years as a criminal defense attorney, reading the many confessions police obtain through nonviolent means, an actual conversation with a skilled interrogator gets more reliable information more effectively than violent tactics like waterboarding, and that doesn't even factor in the military costs of torture related by a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, Thomas Ricks, who wrote a really well-reported, well-documented book I actually read titled Fiasco, The American Military Adventure in Iraq, so he knows what he's talking about when he told ABC's This Week.
Was some information obtained through torture? Probably, yeah. Could it have been obtained through more professional methods that intelligence professionals recommended? Almost certainly, yes. We could have gotten it sooner and better. Also, what we know is that the use of torture became the prime recruiting tool for al-Qaeda and for insurgents in Iraq, and so directly resulted in the death of American troops.
Wow. Torture directly resulting in the death of American troops? That's certainly a question Fox News never brought up with Dick Cheney in the exclusive interview Cheney gave last weekend, nor did Fox News really challenge at all the spin and misstatement supporting torture from one of the chief architects of the Bush torture program, or so it seemed to me, but I want to know what you think. Should Fox News' Chris Wallace have asked Dick Cheney more probing questions about the effectiveness of torture rather than just asking if it should be reinstituted? And on the bigger question, given all the evidence showing conventional interrogation is faster and more reliable than torture, as well as all the evidence of the real costs of torture, why would anyone even raise the question of whether so-called enhanced interrogation techniques should be reinstated?
YouTube, you decide.